Okay, today we are going to take a short break from talking about cars to instead going through a list on IMDb of the top 10 How I Met Your Mother episodes according to IMDb users. So this list was compiled by the user Little Redemption, and it's essentially just a list of all the top rated How I Met Your Mother episodes. So let's get started. So number 10 on the list is Swirly, and this is a episode from season 2. And not many fans would say that season 2 is one of the best seasons that How I Met Your Mother ever had, but when I look back on season 2 compared to the other seasons, especially the later seasons of How I Met Your Mother, it was better than what you probably remember from it, especially if you're a fan of How I Met Your Mother. So How I Met Your Mother really took off in the mid to late 2000s, and it was one of many good sitcoms at the time, like The Big Bang Theory, The Office. I think Parks and Rec was already airing at the time, but How I Met Your Mother was a show that I got into because I started watching it when I was in the fourth year of high school, in the final year of high school. And the reason I got into it was that when I left school in the afternoon, I would go home with my grandma and we would make a stop at her house. So I would ride with her and her driver, and we would make a stop at her house, and where she would give us some produce, some food for us to eat for dinner, or sometimes just some of the things that she just wanted to give us. And just I think it was just her way of making us hang out with her, even just a few minutes or maybe an hour during the entire day. And sometimes we would do that 3 or 4 times in a week. Probably three is the most that we ever hung out there on a given week. Anyway, we would wait there, my mom and I, and while waiting, well, she unloaded all the stuff from her vehicle, which is a Mitsubishi Adventure, while the driver was unloading and while just waiting by her living room. There was a TV there, and I would turn on that TV and look for a show during that time. And I think one of the shows airing at the time was Friends, and I was already familiar with the show Friends and how funny it was. I just wanted a good laugh, like maybe watch half an episode before we headed home, and maybe if it was still on at home, I'd continue watching. Anyway, there were times where we arrived on my grandma's house a bit late because she would make stops along the way, and as a result, we'd be a few minutes late when we got to her house. So by the time we got there, sometimes I'd turn on the TV and Friends was no longer there, or I'd be at the tail end of that episode, and another TV show which I was not familiar with was airing, and that show turned out to be How I Met Your Mother. And I would just watch, like, it was only season 1 was airing at the time. There was still no season 2, and I just found the episodes quite funny. And although it was not like Friends at all, because Friends was this 90s, early, probably super early 2000s kind of show. But How I Met Your Mother was different, and it felt more modern, and I thought that it spoke more to a younger audience compared to Friends. So anyway, that's how I got into How I Met Your Mother. I would buy a bunch of DVDs just to binge watch How I Met Your Mother. Me and my best friend would really tune into How I Met Your Mother, especially during the last season where it coincided with our graduation from college. So it was a very emotional, such a weird time for us, because as the show wounded down, so did our time in college, and we didn't know what would happen after that. And uh, as we reached the last episode, it was also leading up to our graduation from college, so it was such a weird parallel at the time. And according to this list, it's number 10 is an episode called Swirly, which is an episode in season 2. And I'm a bit surprised that this even made a list. And I would say I'd rate swirly 8 out of 10 because it's not one of the most memorable episodes. Yeah, there. I put my rating in as well. Actually, you need to sign in. Anyway, I would rate Swirly an 8 out of 10. It's not exactly the most memorable episode because I remember season 2 as that wedding of Marshall. And I think this was probably the time we met Ted's parents as well. Those episodes are way funnier than Swirly. So I think this is just an 8 out of 10. And I'm not sure why it even made the top 10 list. But according to the IMDB users, this should be number 10. Number 9 is The Naked Man. So The Naked Man was perhaps one of the most iconic episodes, and one of those episodes that just won't age well, especially if this episode was aired today. So we had different sensibilities back then. We were probably more tolerant on sex jokes and about sexuality, but for everything that's happened, I think it's been 18 years since The Naked Man aired. And for those who remember this episode, this was kind of one of the funnier episodes, and one of those episodes where How I Met Your Mother introduces a concept or just makes it a thing, right? So this was also one of those episodes where we kind of saw the show as being a quality kind of TV show, not just your run-of-the-mill sitcom. So How I Met Your Mother was a different sitcom in that it was really well produced, and this episode was written in a very unique way. So even though it kind of ages very poorly, like it ages like milk, especially considering where we are today, I'd still rate this a 9 out of 10. Sorry, 9 out of 10. And The Perfect Week. So at number 8, according to IMDB users, is The Perfect Week. So we know that Barney likes to show off to his friends about his exploits, but we never really knew how often he got laid or he ever slept with different women. But in The Perfect Week, he was trying to go 7 for 7, so have a new girl sleep with him every night, or at least say yes. So I like the way that, of course, this is one of the most disgusting things you could ever come across in a TV show, but I did like the way that they structured the show, and they were very creative in that they kind of made it a sport for Barney, because he's the type of guy who would probably make a sport out of it, like make a game out of getting laid. So The Perfect Week sort of captured everything that about him as a character, and even though all his friends were grossed out, I think that the credit really goes to the writers for how they wrote this specific episode, and how they also the producers for how they put this episode together. So I would rate The Perfect Week a 9 out of 10 as well. Alright, so Showdown. Okay, so Showdown is not, for me, one of the more memorable episodes in How I Met Your Mother. So for How I Met Your Mother, Barney's personal life has been a mystery, and there's been this running gag of him trying to tell the gang that his father is Bob Barker, and he worms his way into the show, The Price is Right, prepares months beforehand so that he could get all the answers correct until he would win the game show. And when he finally did win the game show and meet Bob Barker, I thought that was super funny. So I think this would also be a 9 out of 10 for me. Okay, spoiler alert. So I think this is about Ted and that new girlfriend that just talks too much, and I thought that this was a bit corny for me. I didn't think that this was one of the funnier episodes they had back in the day, so I would say this is a 7 out of 10 for me, for spoiler alert. And then Blitzgiving. So at the time, we had already gone through Robin and Barney relationship, And this was, I'd say, season 6 is not one of the stronger seasons that How I Met Your Mother ever had. And essentially, in Blitzgiving, it's a Thanksgiving episode that How I Met Your Mother did. And there's this guy named Blitz, and he's just the most unlucky guy because he misses whatever legendary thing that happens because he's Blitz, he's being a Blitz. That's how they kind of wrote this episode. So I think this was just one of those episodes that's just a joke wrapped in a as an episode. So I'd say this is not for me one of the top 10 episodes of all time, but I would still probably give it 8 out of 10 because it was still funny though. And slap bet, yeah. So slap bet, or the very concept of slap bet, is something really iconic about the show, and I think it's in a two-way tie for some reason. In a two-way tie with Blitzgiving, somehow it's in number 4, but essentially Marshall and Barney have this slap bet that goes on for a very long time, and I think this is the first episode that established the slap bet. And this was also the episode that we meet Robin Sparkles. So I understand why all the IMDb users would rate it this high, and I would probably rate it this high. So I'd say slap bet would be my first 10 out of 10 among all the episodes ranked here. And then Game Night. Oh yeah, this is one of their best episodes. I'm surprised though that many of my favorite episodes aren't in the top 10. But Game Night, I would probably put Game Night in my personal top 10 because this was during Victoria's introduction to the gang. So they were trying to see the gang, Marshall and Lily especially, were trying to see if to vet Ted's new girlfriend. And what's even crazier is that Robin's right there in that episode. But what's even crazier is that somehow they were able to. I'm really impressed with how they wrote this episode because somehow they were able to inject Barney's backstory in Game Night, because up till that point, especially, this was still season 1, but we hardly knew anything about Barney up until then, especially before he became this really cool womanizer guy. So in Game Night, we kind of get a background on what kind of person he was before he met everyone, before he was the Barney that we knew. So Game Night was just one of the best episodes they ever had, especially how they wrote it. So I would still rate it a 10 out of 10. Alright. So the playbook, yeah, definitely the playbook. I would put it in my personal top 10. So the playbook starts with the scuba diver, and the playbook is something that one of the things that you would really remember about How I Met Your Mother. So if you're a How I Met Your Mother fan, you would remember like the yellow umbrella, and probably the pineapple incident, and all the running gags that the show had. And the playbook would probably be also one of the things that you would remember. So essentially in this episode we get a glimpse of what Barney's playbook is for getting laid. Like I think he had the Miss Stinsfire, the Cheap Trick, even the Ted Mosby. So all the things, all the gimmicks that Barney does just to get laid, we discover that he keeps it in a book called The Playbook. So aside from that and the bro code, I think the playbook is definitely one of the best gags that they run, and I would still say it's a 10 out of 10, and it's deserving of its spot here. So How I Met Your Mother number 1 episode here is How Your Mother Met Me. And to be honest, before I came into this list, I had to rewatch this entire episode because I kind of missed it because among all the seasons that How I Met Your Mother had, season 9 is that season that I don't rewatch a lot because as a longtime fan of How I Met Your Mother, I never get tired of rewatching the season, especially season 1, 2, 3, maybe not 5, but yeah, 4, sometimes 6, but I don't rewatch a lot season 9 because in this season, I don't think Pamela Fryman was in a lot of episodes, and I think Pamela Fryman was one of the better writer producers that they had. But essentially, in How Your Mother Met Me, it's still one of the best episodes that they ever did. Although it wouldn't be my favorite, but it's the episode that tried to tie everything together because from season 1 to 8 we never really met the mother, and the show is literally titled How I Met Your Mother, and yet we never got to meet the mother from all the way from season 1 to 8, and there are like 20 plus episodes per season. So they had the writers, the production team, even the actors had a very daunting task to just introduce the mother on the very last season and make us, or sell the mother to us, sell that character to us. So it was a very challenging thing that they had to do, and somehow in season 9 episode 16 in How Your Mother Met Me, they were able to do that. And although I'm not the biggest fan of the finale, I think I'm Team Robin, sorry. But in How Your Mother Met Me, we finally get the backstory of the mother, and I thought it was one of the most well-written episodes they ever did, and it certainly belongs to the top 5 best-written How I Met Your Mother episodes. And what's crazy is that the main character of this episode is not from the 5 main people or characters that we know from How I Met Your Mother. Not Ted, not Robin, Barney, Marshall, not Lily, but their main character was the mother, and it's literally the title character, the mother. So in How Your Mother Met Me, we saw all those points from the mother's life, Tracy's life, from her 21st birthday where she got a gift, the ukulele gift, but it's sad that during that birthday she discovered that her boyfriend died, and this boyfriend was for her soulmate. And even until that weekend where Barney and Robin were going to get married, she was still in love with her ex-boyfriend who died a long time ago. So this was such a heartwarming, very touching episode, and it's just one of those episodes that separate How I Met Your Mother from ordinary sitcom to a classic TV show, just a classic show that has incredible replay value. That's why it's one of the most streamed shows on TV, and even the new adaptations or the How I Met Your Father, I don't know, all the other spin-offs just can't compare to the original How I Met Your Mother show. So I think we've gone through all 10, and I think I agree with most, probably I think 60% of what's on this list. So I'm not surprised by some of what we found on this list. I definitely agree. Number 1 should be How Your Mother Met Me. And I guess that's it. Thanks for listening.